The lights went out, and for 3 full seconds, there was nothing. Not just darkness, but a complete theft of sound. 20,000 people, holding their collective breath, trapped in a sudden, surreal vacuum. You don't just hear that kind of silence, you feel it in your chest. It's the silence of anticipation, the kind that hangs heavy in the air just before a storm breaks. In that pressurized quiet, the entire narrative of the night, the entire season of the show, was held in suspense. Every fan, every camera operator, every commentator. Suddenly, a child in the dark, waiting for a story. And then, ... a sound. Not a crash. Not music. A voice. Amplified, haunting, and unmistakable, echoing from the speakers as if they were whispering a secret to everyone at once. Mummy is back. It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. The crowd didn't just cheer. They erupted. It was a raw, primal release of tension. Smoke, thick and white, billowed from the stage. The first strobes of light cut through it, and a silhouette appeared. This wasn't a person walking to the ring. It was a storm making landfall. This wasn't just a comeback. It was a reckoning. The realization hit everyone at once. The order had been broken, and the architect of chaos had just reclaimed her throne. In the arena, the sound was deafening, but the sight was something else. A sea of hands, not just clapping, but holding up their phones. 20,000 tiny screens, all pointed at the stage, desperately trying to capture the impossible. They weren't just watching. They were documenting. They were bearing witness. In that moment, every single person in that building became a broadcaster, a journalist, a historian for this one singular event. They were capturing the digital proof. I was there. That wave of light from the phones wasn't just a reaction. It was the start of the next phase. Before Rhea Ripley even took a step, the event was already online. The viral tsunami had already left the shore. The clips, blurry and shaking, were hitting social media. "Mommy is back" wasn't just a catchphrase. It was a trending hashtag before her first boot even hit the steel ramp. This is the new power. It's not just about the physical presence. It's about the immediate digital footprint. The shockwave of her return wasn't contained to the building. It hit the internet with the force of a tidal wave, flooding timelines, breaking algorithms, and ensuring that by morning, the dark force hadn't just returned to an arena. It had returned to the global consciousness, instantly. While the arena was chaos, the backstage area was the opposite. It was a portrait of pure, cold silence. Imagine a dozen athletes, the best in the world, crowded around a single monitor in the gorilla position. Their own matches, their own feuds, their own carefully crafted stories, all of it just evaporated. They watched the screen, not as colleagues, but as witnesses to a power shift. You could see the calculations in their eyes. For some, it was fear. The dominant force, the one they thought was gone, was back. The mountain they had to climb just got infinitely higher. For others, it was opportunity. A returning monarch means the kingdom is in flux. It means new targets, new challenges, new chances to make a name. But for most, it was a cold, hard realization. The spotlight they were all fighting for had just been seized, stolen right from under them. The air backstage wasn't electric, it was heavy. It was the feeling of a script being torn to shreds and rewritten live by someone who wasn't following the rules. Their world, their plans, their next step, all of it was just put on hold. The Queen was back, and the court was terrified. Further down the hall, in a room filled with blinking lights and screens, the producers and writers sat in stunned silence. Their carefully planned show, timed to the second, was now completely broken. This wasn't on their schedule. This wasn't on their script. The return was a secret kept from them. They were supposed to be the storytellers, the ones in control. But in that moment, they were just spectators, like everyone else. The mummy phenomenon had become something bigger than the machine that built it. It had become a self-sustaining entity. You can imagine the head of creative headset thrown on the desk. "Who's watching?" This is the moment a creator realizes their creation has outgrown them. They aren't producing this. They are reacting to it. They can't cut to a commercial. They can't change the camera angle to hide it. They had to follow her. The power dynamic in the entire company shifted, not in a boardroom, but in 3 seconds of darkness. The Dark Force wasn't just a nickname for a performer. It was a description of an event that just consumed their entire production. A black hole of charisma that warped the show around itself. By sunrise, it was no longer a wrestling story. It was the story. News anchors who couldn't tell a clothesline from a powerbomb were reading teleprompters about Mummy's return. Sports analysis shows, usually reserved for football and basketball, were playing the clip. Why? Because it transcended the industry. It was pure, uncut drama. It was the story of an exile returning, a leader reclaiming her territory. The media didn't just report on it, they feasted on it. This is the part of the story we often miss. We see the return, but we don't see the aftermath. We don't see the public relations team scrambling, the interviews being booked, the merchandise orders crashing the servers, the company's stock, their public perception. It all hinges on these moments. Rhea Ripley's return wasn't just a pop for the crowd. It was a move on a global chessboard. It was a statement to competitors, to shareholders, to the world. Our biggest star is back, and you cannot ignore us. The pressure to deliver on that hype, however, is immense. The machine needs to be fed, and the Dark Force was now the main course. When you become a force, you are no longer just a person. You are an idea. And the idea of Mommy had grown in her absence. It became a symbol of unapologetic dominance, of control, of a different kind of power. That name, Mummy, carries a weight that is almost impossible to bear. It's a promise to the audience. A promise of chaos, of drama, of unwavering confidence. But what happens when the person behind the idea has to live up to it every single night? This return wasn't just a celebration. It was the start of a new, crushing expectation. She can't just be back. She has to be better. She has to be the storm they remember. Every word she speaks, every move she makes, will be compared to the memory, to the legend that grew while she was gone. This is the unseen pressure of a comeback. It's the battle not against an opponent in the ring, but against the ghost of your own legacy. The crowd doesn't want the person. They want the icon. And that icon is a heavy crown to wear, especially when you've just announced to the world that you're the only one who can. We see the public eruption, the smoke, the lights. But what happens hours later, when the arena is empty and the adrenaline fades? What happens in the quiet of a hotel room, when the boots are off and the armor is set aside? There's a moment of silence that is far heavier than the one that preceded her return. There's the phone call. Maybe it's to her family back in Australia. People who live a world away from this larger-than-life chaos. How do you even begin to explain a night like that? Yeah, Mom? It was loud. How do you separate the Dark Force from the daughter, the sister, the friend? The Mummy persona is a shield, but it is also a K. The world celebrates the return of the character. But what about the return of the person? This is the deep, unseen consequence of becoming a global phenomenon. The persona becomes the reality. The expectation is that you are the storm, 24/7. But a storm can't be a storm forever, it asks the rest. And in that quiet, personal space, one has to wonder, does she control the Dark Force? Or, after a night like that, does it now control her? The moment she appeared, a target was painted on her back. Not a metaphorical one, but a real, tangible one. By returning, by declaring Mummy is back, she didn't just rejoin the roster. She climbed to the top of the food chain and kicked everyone else down a rung. Every other athlete in that locker room now has a new goal. Take down the Queen. The alliances that were built in her absence are now fractured. The champions who held the titles are now looking over their shoulder. She is, once again, the final boss. But this time, it's different. Before, she was the hunter. Now, she is the hunted. She is the benchmark. She is the one whose name of victory over means everything. This return, this domination reborn, comes at a cost. The cost is isolation. You cannot be the Dark Force and also be one of the crew. You are separate. You are other. She walks a path alone in the very spotlight she commands. Every handshake is a potential betrayal. Every ally, a potential rival. This is the cold reality of the throne she just The return is the shock. But the next week, that is the true test. The first confrontation, she walks to the ring, not as a surprise, but as the new center of this universe. The music hits, the crowd reacts, but the energy is different. It's not shock, it's expectation. And standing in the ring is the champion, or the rival, who had to live through the week of her return. The one whose own accomplishments were completely overshadowed by the Dark Force. This is where the real story begins. The champion's eyes are not filled with fear. They are filled with resentment, with anger. You stole my moment, they are thinking. You hijacked my show. The promo that follows isn't about championships. It's about stolen light. It's about relevance. Rhea's return, in that moment, is no longer a victory. It's an insult to the person standing opposite her. The crowd is silent again, but this time they are waiting for the first shot to be fired. The comeback was the earthquake. This is the aftershock, and it's often more damaging than the quake itself. The real domination isn't the return. It's surviving what comes next. We've been watching this all wrong. We think the story is the return. The lights, the smoke, the voice. We think the Dark Force is the person who appeared on the ramp. But what if it isn't? What if the real story, the real domination, was the absence? Think about it. For months, her name was whispered. Her presence was felt, even when she wasn't there. Her Mommy Caland response was chanted at other wrestlers. She wasn't just gone. She was a void. A vacuum. And that vacuum became the real Dark Force. It pulled all the light and energy in the show towards it. It made everyone else seem less important just by not being her. She didn't have to do anything to maintain her power. Her absence was the power play. The return ... That wasn't the domination. That was just the confirmation. It was the moment the void took physical form and cashed in on all the power it had been accumulating. The viral moment wasn't the start of her new reign. It was the end of her most dominant one. The true mastery, the real Dark Force, was convincing the entire world to stop and wait in the dark, just to see if she'd come back. And se did.